G'day, welcome back to Project Brupeg, story of a sunken fishing trawler converting into a global expedition and research boat. Today, we're getting our gates finished and back on the boat. Before we get into that, I've got to cut this IBC up. So this is the plastic tank that's inside the IBC frame. I've got to slice it up and open, so I'm going to do that with my skill saw, but it stinks pretty bad, so we're going to be using a full face mask to do that. Done. That's diesel bug in its glory when it's been killed and left sitting in a tank, so it kind of goes almost tar like. It's quite hard. Yeah, so that's what goes through your filters, blocks them up, kills your engine. I need to grind these off. This is one of the gates. This is the what's this, port gate, and these are the, I suppose, raising blocks, doublers, whatever you want to call them. These are the lumps of steel that we drilled and tapped last time, and we had our hinge fitting straight on top of that. You can sort of see it bolts into those 3 holes there. Now, they work great, but they were a pain in the ass to duplicate and put onto the other gates, so we've completely bypassed that, and we've gone with our stainless hinge layout that we showed you before. What I need to do is cut these off flush, because the new hinges are going to go pretty much where they are. So, big grinder, disc with lots of reach. We're going to slice straight in and try and cut through the whole lot. Right, now we've got the basic shape ground. I want to come down the same from this top line. I want to come down 70mm and then down 500mm on both of them, so that they're both going to be the same sort of location. But I don't want it to be square to the front, because I don't know if this is cut perfect. I'm going to have it square to this line here, so it's an easy way for me to be able to make sure I get the hinges lined up. There, look at that. Right. We're ready to start tacking. So this is gate number 1. We've got our stainless hinges that we made. I've got a piece of rod, threaded rod. Just these are nipped up tight on each one so that they can't move. We've got the hinge for the gate on top, so that all of the weight hangs down onto these. The bolt theoretically only does the pivoting. It doesn't do any of the weight holding or anything like that. What I have done is aligned this dimension here with the top, so it's square running down there, and I have offset this slightly. And the reason I've done that, I've basically moved it out. If you can see right down low, the hinge has like a taper coming back in that meets the steel on the gate. The reason I've done that is because when the gate swings open, it actually moves it away from the opening, so it doesn't bind up with anything or get in the way, keeps the opening as wide as we can. These are wide enough to get a 16-inch wheelchair through them, and that's why they are the specific size they are. So that's partly why I want to have the gate swing open and clear everything. Now, what I've also done, using this top edge here, aligned with that, the underside of this top here, if I use that on both of them, they're going to be in identical position. So I'll loosen one nut off on both sides and take them off and swap the, or loosen that nut and loosen that nut there, swap the stainless over when I do the other gate, and then yeah, we're ready to go. I need to belt out another 4 of these hinges so that we can make the second gate work. is why good plasma cutters are awesome. That would be an hour of work and swearing on the old plasma cutter. Now these are freehand plasma cuts, so they're pretty manky on the edges, and that's not because of the machine, that's because of the driver. If these were on a CNC, it would go around, and my understanding is you can get it within 0.3 of a millimeter of accuracy, so you could pretty much cut these out to be the exact final thing if you were doing it on a CNC machine. I'm not quite as calibrated as a CNC, so mine are within 0.3 of a meter, I'd say. Right, so we've got our 4 hinges cut out, so what I need to do now is just go through with the flapper and just clean up any edges, also give them a quick polish up before we start welding these on, but they're ready to go now. They came out pretty well, happy with those, so we'll get these on that threaded rod and we'll mount them on the second gate. We are ready to tack. With our Sony dead in the water for now, we're using GoPros to film everything, so sound quality is going to be a bit different this episode. However, we have made quite a rig. This is our danger cam, so it's got an external battery so that it actually lasts more than 3 minutes, and a hell of a lens on it so that we can throw it right in the middle of grinding, and that way we don't have to worry about killing an expensive GoPro. We can just replace a $1 lens. And then this is our other rig, so it's our roll cage that goes on our camera on our normal Sony, so it's quite a beefy chunky cage so that we don't kill it. But we've got a GoPro 9 sitting on there with another external battery pack so that lasts more than 3 seconds. Right, lunch is done. Let's get back into some welding. Look at that, what a cracker day. A lot of wind. You can see our windometer next door to us. Right. Well done! Right, I'm not sure what we should be set at, but we are set at 180 amps. I think we'll get rid of some of this. Right, here we go. It's always those little bits of information that you don't necessarily know if you're teaching yourself, and it's just incredibly handy to watch people that know what they're doing do it, because they'll say there's one-liners and it makes a world of difference. I watched some of Jody on weldingtipsandtricks.com. I watched some of his TIG welding, and he said one thing that resonated, and it was don't pull the rod out of your argon puddle, just keep it in there. I was pulling the rod out too far and it would oxidize, which is so obvious and evident when I think about it now, but I didn't think about it as a learner. So this lot of welding, I've actually tried to keep the rod in the argon puddle, walk the cup, do all of the things that everybody talks about. I'm starting to get more uniform welds, which I'm really happy with. They're still, you know, learner TIG welds, I'm the first to admit that, but yeah, I think I'm getting my head around TIG finally. So these are the welds that I've just done. There's way less discoloration than I'm used to, so normally I get a lot more like crappy colouring and things like that, and realising it now, I'm pulling the stick out of the argon puddle, putting it back in and introducing a whole bunch of oxidization. This one here, you can sort of see the colour has gone a bit, it's quite purple, so the colour's gone a bit full on with heat and things like that. But the weld itself is fairly uniform, so once we sandblast that up, I think that's going to come up alright. Second hinge set, I don't need to align them or anything, they're already tacked and aligned. All I'm doing is putting this on so that it holds it rigid as I weld it, doesn't, you know, provides a bit of resistance for it bending and warping and doing weird stuff. Right, let's glue these together now. Right, around this side of the boat we've got a bit of an opening, you can see just there. I need to trim, right at the bottom there's about an inch piece of steel that sticks up about an inch, 6mm plate that used to be part of the hull, part of the bulwarks. I need to trim that off so that we've got a nice smooth path for the water to flow. Let me show you what it looks like up top. This is that same opening. You can see that's the lip just there. So I've made a small notch over that side there so that water will drain out. But we want to basically get rid of that thing right the way across. So it's a pain in the neck. Every time water gets on this back deck, you end up with a big puddle of rubbish and junk just sort of sitting behind it. So we want to make a path so that all the gunk can go flying off. So on the other side of the boat, you can see we've already done the modification. So it had the 1-inch lip sticking up from the hull, from the deck, sorry, up. That used to be part of the bulwark. When we get rid of that lip, we do have to V it out and weld it, because it's like a triple joint between the deck, the 6mm of the deck, the 6mm of the hull, and then the steel of the half round, the sponson. So the sponson is basically the wear strip. So if you come on the outside of the boat, you got this half round here, that's your sponson. So right away along there you've got a join where 3 pieces of steel link up together. So when we cut this flush, we grind it down flush like this, and then I do a big V all the way along here and fill that back up with weld, and then cap the weld, grind the weld flat on the top. And that's so that we have a nice strong join across there still, and then also so that we have a nice smooth flush area, so that water can just run straight out. So I've already noticed a bit of an issue. On this side here, the sponson is welded probably ½ an inch higher than on the other side. But you know, who needs symmetry on a boat? So I think what we're going to find here is we'll always have a slight lip, but we can make it rounded. So that way we can just push stuff over the side with a broom. Right, wind's getting up a little bit, so rather than do the grinding on this area here and spray our boat and the neighbour's boat with grinding dust and flecks of metal and stuff like that, it's about 15 knots, so it's going to basically blow it everywhere. Rather than do that, I'm going to do that first thing in the morning. It's about 4 knots of wind predicted for like crack of dawn Sunday, so we'll get it done then. What I will do is get this gate here tacked into where it needs to go. Now I do need to do a little bit of grinding on the side of the hull to get the paint off, but I'm not going to be taking bucket loads of metal. I'm just going to be doing a real, you know, light scuff, so I'm quite happy to do that in this sort of wind. But it means that I can get this gate on and get that job sort of started and get the paint onto that gate as well. What I've done, just got a bit of 75x6 flat bar, and I've just clamped it on top like so. You can just sort of see there it's hanging off either side, and I sit that on this part here of the top of the bulwark, and that aligns the top perfectly, and then I adjust the bottom to suit whatever I need, so that when I weld it in, it works for both the top and the alignment of the hull on the outside. Draw some lines. There is no way I can open this gate right now. This thing. Lovely. Let's go show Jess her new gate. Holy shit, look at that. It quite literally looks like that off the camera as well. That is such a cool sunset. That is pretty awesome. Apparently there's a burn off happening at one of the islands not far from here, Fraser Island. They're trying to get rid of some of the scrub before summer happens, so this is all of the smoke from this. We're basically downwind of them at the moment. I'm hoping this shows up decent. I've got the GoPro set up, trying to capture it. But if it doesn't, that kind of gives you an idea what we're looking at. This morning's job, we need to get in and grind that edge right the way along so that it's a nice smooth flow for water. There'll always be a little bit of a lip because the sponson on this side is slightly higher than the other, but we can deal with that. And another job we need to get done, these blocks have to come off the boat. So there's one at the top and one at the bottom down here. They've both got to come off. So they're welded around each of the 4 sides. We just need to put a cut-off disc through the weld, give it a whack, get rid of them, grind it up and clean it up so that we can put our new stainless hinges on. These guys, so same deal, make a set of them on the other side. you sort of see it's come up nice and smooth and everything, but you can see also there's a hairline gap all the way down there now. So that's basically where we need to grind it out and then weld those two back together. So right now the deck and the hull, sorry, the deck and the hull are joined, but the hull and the sponson are not joined. So we need to basically V that right out, get a nice solid weld in there. So same technique that we used on the plate. We need to get in with the edge of a grinding disc, V it right out, and then we can start filling that up with a weld. And once we've got the weld in this one, we're actually going to grind the top of it smooth, so we want quite a deep V in there so we can get a decent amount of weld metal. And then, yeah, we'll V it out, we'll grind it off smooth so the water's got a nice easy path over top.
I was never the one to write up a song for just anyone. I was always the one to find myself lost in long conversations, cause I've always been told that things will unfold if you keep on waiting. But then you came along and proved me wrong.
Right, ground out. So you can sort of see along there, we've got a fairly decent sort of groove. We'll fill all of this up, even the holes that I blew with the plasma. We'll fill all of that up with new weld, and then we'll round it all off. So there's going to be probably a good 3 or 4 mil depth of weld in there. And then down here, where I really couldn't get into those corners with the grinders, I dug it lower than the deck. So I'm actually going to do a wide weld and then grind it back up, fill it all back up. So it'll be slightly different, but that's as deep as I can actually get it. You can see you've got the deck join, and on the other side you've got where the iron filings are lumping up, there and there. They are the gaps between the two plates. Iron's always a really good idea if you're ever trying to find cracks in steel like this. If you magnetize the steel in some way, you can either grind it, heat, there's different ways you can do it, grinding, heating, or actual magnets. The iron filings will go to the edges, so it's a real good way to find where cracks are. In this case you can see that there's two what look like cracks, but they're basically just plate joins down in there. So we'll get the welder set up and we'll start blasting some steel on that.
Feel so free, oh my sweet baby. And I think to myself, and I'm thinking out loud, we won't need nothing else for the rest of our time. And I know it so well, I'll always be by your side. Cause you glue all the pieces back together. Yeah, you take all my wrongs and make them better. Yeah, you're making me wanna try forever. And I feel so free.
So spray transfer, that's what I used for that weld there. I'll grind it up. There's probably a couple of start stops that I'm not happy with. I should have probably ground them, but I thought it was hot enough that I could have just burned straight back in. For those that don't know, spray transfer is a neat way of getting a really hot weld. Normal short circuit MIG, where you basically have the wire touch the work, it arcs out and then creates basically molten metal and starts the weld. Spray transfer is different. The wire never touches the metal at all. It's got so much electricity running through it and so much amperage for the amount of wire speed you've got that it liquefies before it gets to the metal, and it literally sprays it. And obviously spray transfer, it's pretty self-explanatory when you think of it like that, but it sprays it onto the weld. It's a wee bit slower than short circuit MIG, but you can get, I believe, deeper penetration, and yeah, I'm just really happy with it. It gives you a nice flat weld, but also quite a deep weld. And for the people that tell me you can't do spray transfer with a little machine, balls to you, this thing absolutely can. So I had it set at 28 volts and 14, I don't know what that is, 14 meters a minute or something for wire speed. That's basically your wire feed. I'm not 100% sure what that number is for. I'm going to assume 14 meters a minute, and that's my voltage. Right, lip ground. So that's nice rounded radius. It's all lovely, so that'll easily be able to have water pushed over it. Let's get back into this gate. Right, next job, we're going to cut these guys off and get the gate welded on. Right, 2 lumps of steel cut. So with that done, we can now get into aligning this gate and then welding on the new hinges. Same setup as what we had on the other side. So we've got the threaded rod with the hinges all aligned. They're all tigged on to the gate itself. I've got the piece of 75mm flat bar just G-clamped on, a couple of G-clamps just holding that on, and I've lined it with this edge here, so right along there is basically flush. That allows me to sit that surface there, the underside of both ends. One sits on there, one sits on there. We know she's lined up on the top, and then also lined up along that front as well. So let's get this in, get it tigged on. So while they're off the boat, we can throw a coat of hull grey on everything. Now, these are temporary gates, remember, so that's why we've prepped them so meticulously. Let me show you what is involved. It's important to leave divots, holes, sometimes a little bit of fluff off your roller, including the odd sort of run. That's really important on temporary gates. You want to make sure that that's on there. And the way that you deal with that is you just put a layer of paint that's about 5mm thick, and that works like a filler, and eventually gravity over a number of years settles it down until you've got a nice smooth finish. Really important when you're putting on marine paint to follow the manufacturer's instructions. As I don't have any instructions for this paint, I'm clearly absolved of that responsibility. So just go for your life, do what you like, really. Right, coat number 1. The ironic thing is that paint's going to look new and shiny and lovely, and the rest of the boat is grey and faded and awful. Before we go into the water, we need to do another coat on the hull. It's not a huge job, we'll just sand it down. It'll probably take us, I don't know, 2 or 3 days to get the hull sanded, and then we'll probably a day per coat, so they allow maybe 3 days to get all the painting done. But that needs to happen before we go in the water, because the paint we put on, we did that maybe 4 years ago now, and single pack doesn't last that great in UV, especially in tropical Australia UV. It gets sort of faded and a bit sort of dull, and that's what the hull's looking like at the moment. So before we go in, we'll throw a coat of paint on and make the hull look a bit lovely again. Blimey, it's windy right now, and I don't have any sound protection for the mic, so I'm sorry for the wind noise. Right, well, we've got these with one coat on the outside, so the 4 gates. So I'm going to stick them on the boat now, and then I'll do the final coat on the boat, because as you can see, we are in a gravel yard. It's blowing its guts off. So if I leave them down here, I can't do any paint without risking getting a lot of dirt in them, dust and all that sort of stuff. So my plan is to basically hang them and paint both sides while it's up on the boat. It's still pretty windy up there, but there's not really any dust compared to down here. As you can hear, it's bloody windy. So I was thinking, why don't we just turn the wind off and turn the fun go on.
Keep talking good, keep talking sweet, keep sugar on, baby. I got you good, I got you sweet, got you on hold. My baby knows what I'm all about, what I'm all about. My baby knows what I'm all about, what I'm all about. Keep moving fast, keep moving slow, keep rhythm up, baby. You got me good, you got me sweet, got me on hold. Baby knows what I want, baby knows just how I'm feeling now. You got me locking, walking, stalking, walking, freaking, I'm freewheeling for a while. My baby knows what I'm
So we'll let that dry, and then we'll get stuck in and we'll clean this lot up as well, because you know, OCD and all that sort of stuff. Got to put a little bit of 2-pack on that and paint those guys. But once that's dry, we'll start fitting the lock and on both sides. And then these gates here, I'll show you what they look like down the bottom. From a distance, they're pretty cool. Like, they kind of disappear, you know, wide open. They're not in the way. They sort of tuck nicely out to the side. So they're kind of quite small as well, which means they're easy for Jess to handle. And they're not going to be massive weights swinging around at sea. Those ones are pretty good. It's the side ones that are going to have the issues. These are the ones that we're going to have to deal with. Now, in terms of weight, we want to swap over to aluminium. And there's a reason we want to do that. Alloy as a material is really strong and it's light. It's a great material for boats, basically, whether it's hulls or whether it's something simple like a gate. Now, you do have the issue with dissimilar metal, so we'll have stainless hinges, stainless pins, and then we're going to have steel on the boat and aluminium on the gate. So there is theoretically the issue of wind noise, and I bet Jess is going to yell at me for recording this in the windiest part of the boat. That's better. How's that? So there is the issue of dissimilar metals and corrosion. Aluminium does like to dissolve away if the conditions aren't right for it. There's a few things you can do to deal with that. So bare aluminium, the surface oxidizes, and that basically protects it from corrosion. However, if you've got stray current or if you've got dissimilar metals, it doesn't necessarily work the same, and it starts to corrode away at the easiest metal that will melt. There's definitely a technical term for that. So the way that you actually solve that, it's a really simple thing, and it's what they do on a lot of commercial ships where they have, say, aluminium superstructure like cabins, etc., and then a steel hull. You isolate it, so you can put it either, in our case we're going to have stainless hinges joining onto an aluminium hinge. You know, the top half will be on the gate will be aluminium, the bottom half will be stainless on the boat. We're going to have a stainless pin going through them. If you put a nylon washer between them, and then you also have nylon going down the sides of the bolt, so that the bolt itself can't touch two types of metal. It can only touch one, so normally you'd have it rubbing on the stainless, and that way the aluminium itself is completely isolated electrically from the boat itself. Now we'll have to do a similar sort of thing on the lock, because obviously you don't want the lock being metal on metal, so there'll have to be some sort of nylon something or other involved in the locking mechanism, but none of that's a problem. Everything that we'll be doing on it will be something that either navies or commercial marine boats, that sort of thing, have solved at some point. We just need to figure out what it is to do, and we'll get that done, and that way our gates will be light, strong, and they'll last forever. Now that we've got gates, it's time to finally start getting into this kitchen. Jess has been cooking up a storm. Hello.
Hi.
So the plan, this weekend I suppose, we're going to rip the kitchen apart.
Finally.
That sounds less fun than what it's going to be.
It's going to be a really hard job.
It's going to be a slog. We don't want project scope growth
No.
in this particular project. We are damn sick of that. If you're not sure what a cable tray is, this is a cable tray. So it's basically a mesh metal thing that you fasten to a wall. In our case we glue it to a wall, and then you can zip tie cables to it in a really neat fashion. So let me show you it on the roof. You can sort of see this is our cable tray. You've got some temporary cables, but we've also got some permanent cables. Those big grey ones are permanent, and it just keeps it really neat and tidy. Now we have got about 15 meters of cable tray to put in the boat, around this front end of the boat. Doesn't sound like a lot, but each one's like a 1.2 meters, 1.3 meters, bits and pieces here and there. There's going to be trays everywhere, and that's so that our wiring is going to be super safe and rigid. We're not going to have any issues, and it's also going to meet safety standards and things like that.